Good night.
Hey, Daniel, what do you get if you cross the M1 with a pair of crutches?
I don't know. What do you get if you cross the M1 with a pair of crutches?
Knocked over. Hey, Jane, did you hear about the man who was charged with beating up his wife?
First offender?
First offender, then a poker, then a coal scupper.
Did you know Hadrian's starting a campaign to conquer the Welsh and turn the whole population into slaves?
Oh, you mean a sort of Slave the Wales campaign?
In my country, we have Year of Dragon. In this country, Tories have 4 years of dragon.
In 15 minutes, further drama and intrigue surround the Carrington family, following the explosion when Blake was blinded in Dynasty. And at 9:45, Terry Wogan will be joined by David Bellamy, Peter Skellern, Sir Harry Seacombe, and the star of Monday night's Royal Film Performance, Table for Five, John Voight. At 10:30, exclusive live coverage from Reno, Nevada, of the WBC Welterweight Championship of the World, between the European and Commonwealth champion, Welshman Colin Jones, and the unbeaten Milton McCrory from Detroit, over 12 rounds. And finally tonight, Frank Cannon is waylaid by a woman unknown to him who greets him like a long-lost brother. It's a setup for Cannon at 11:15. It's now 8:40, and time on BBC1 for news and sport.
On a Zimbabwe farm, 4 white people have been murdered after being denounced by their black employees. David Frost marries again, putting the troubles at TVAM behind him. The Argentines who've come to Europe to find out what happened to their sons in the Falklands. And Ireland share the Rugby Championship, with Ollie Campbell scoring a record points total. 4 members of a white family have been murdered by rebel tribesmen in Zimbabwe after being denounced by 2 of their black farm workers. It happened in the troubled region of Matabeleland near Nyamantlofu, where Mr. Eric Stratford, his wife and their teenage granddaughters were shot with Mr. Stratford's own revolver. Tribesmen loyal to Joshua Nkomo, who's now in London, are blamed for recent violence in the region, and the government says 6 of them arrived at dusk and asked the black workers if the Stratfords were good employers. 2 of the workers had recently been warned about coming to work late, and they denounced their employer. All 4 whites were taken to a room and shot. Philip Hayton reporting.
The gang struck Secret Valley Farm just as Eric Stratford was locking up for the night. They seized their elderly victim, tied him up with his wife Christine, and herded them into the farm kitchen, along with their 2 granddaughters aged 12 and 15. The gang then murdered all 4 of them. According to police, blood was splattered all over the kitchen. The killers ransacked the house and then fled, running into the bush. Before murdering the Stratford family, the gang paraded them in front of farm workers. 2 of the labourers, who had apparently reported late for work recently, complained to the gang that Mr. Stratford had treated them badly. This morning, soldiers and police launched a hunt for the attackers, who are probably anti-government rebels, who've often chosen whites as their murder and kidnap victims. Only a few days ago, rebels kidnapped a Bulawayo accountant on the outskirts of the city. The recent upsurge in rebel violence is seen as an act of defiance after the massive and brutal crackdown by government troops, which left up to 1,000 dead. Clearly, the rebels are still a force to be reckoned with.
In Northern Ireland, a man and his 5-year-old son were seriously injured when a bomb exploded in their car in the centre of Armagh early this afternoon. Another man was also injured in the blast. This report from Noel Thompson.
The bomb exploded in a residential area of the city near St. Patrick's Roman Catholic Cathedral. It's still not clear exactly what happened. Police say the bomb appears to have gone off inside the car, a Ford Granada, but they don't know whether or not it was a booby trap. The man and his son were thrown into the road by the force of the blast. The 5-year-old was still conscious when he was picked up. He was crying and covered with blood. He has a fractured skull and serious face injuries. His father, a local shop owner, is also seriously ill with multiple injuries. The condition of the other man is said to be not serious. The father has been identified locally as the cousin of a Roman Catholic who was shot in Armagh 10 days ago. Illegal Protestant paramilitary groups said they carried out that shooting. Then the same day, a Protestant was shot dead. It's believed in retaliation for that attack. There's speculation in Armagh that this car bomb may be connected with that killing.
David Frost was married this afternoon to Lady Karina Fitzalan Howard, daughter of the Duke of Norfolk, the country's senior Roman Catholic peer. There had been worries the ceremony would be postponed because of the row at TVAM, which led to the resignation of Peter Jay as chairman. David Frost is one of the famous 5 presenters there. He's the son of a Methodist minister and has been married before to Peter Sellers' widow, Lynn Frederick.
For the time being at least, David Frost and his new bride were putting all the troubles of TVAM behind them. Outside Chelsea Register Office, he told the crowd of reporters and well-wishers that the one thing on their minds today was their own happiness. The only well-known face among the guests belonged to Peter Jay, the man at the centre of all the turmoil, looking a little recovered from the strain of the past few days. Earlier, Michael Parkinson had summed up the presenters' attitude towards their new management.
We decided unanimously, like the rest of the people who work here, that we shall do our best now to give it a go under the new management. Our situation, our attitude had softened from the fairly aggressive stance we'd taken beforehand because, of course, Peter resigned. And having resigned, which I think was a very honourable thing to do, then, of course, it would have been a silly and futile gesture on anybody's part in this company to have gone to the wall.
The man who's taken over as chief executive, Jonathan Aitken, was in his office early, promising to work round the clock to revive the company's fortunes, and confident of the same dedication from all his new colleagues.
A group of Argentine fathers have arrived in Europe to seek information about their sons who disappeared during the Falklands conflict. The Argentine government won't tell them anything, so they're going to the International Red Cross in Geneva. Then they hope to see the Pope and travel to London to see Mrs. Thatcher. Kate Adie met them in Paris.
Gathered in Buenos Aires last night, these Argentinians hope their unofficial delegation to Europe will be able to find out what happened to more than 300 young men who didn't return from the Falklands conflict. Paris is their first stop, but their main aim is to bring pressure to bear on the British government to reveal if it knows anything about the fate of their sons. To them, it seems a logical step. They've had nothing but confusion and inaccuracy at home. José María del Hierro is typical. He last heard from his son, an army conscript, in a letter written on Mount Longdon last June. But there's been no official information as to why he never returned from the Falklands. Isaias Jimenez's son was a Pucara pilot. He may have been shot down, he may have ditched, but the Argentine Air Force has given no details about his last sortie. The parents raise the suggestions of unknown mass graves or secret prisoner of war camps. In the light of Argentinian experience, they don't find this absurd. They have one definite request to Mrs. Thatcher, that the bodies of Argentinians at present buried on the Falklands be released to their families, even though the Argentine government refuses to discuss the matter. The parents of the missing men stress again and again that they're not interested in politics and they have no wish to embarrass the British government. They're just parents, acting as private individuals, trying to find out what happened to their sons.
In an unusual public outburst in Brussels today, the French finance minister has threatened that his country may withdraw from the European monetary system, the so-called currency snake. Common market finance ministers have been meeting to discuss possible revisions in the exchange rates between the currencies in the system. At the centre of the talks is by how much the mark should be revalued and the franc devalued. The French blame the Germans for the difficulties. The final international matches in the home rugby union season were played today, settling who got the title and who the wooden spoon. Here's David Cass.
Ollie Campbell scored 21 points as Ireland thrashed England to retain a share in the Five Nations Championship they won outright last year. Campbell's points took him to a championship record as Ireland forced England to take the wooden spoon. Bill McLaren describes their tries.
So Peter Wheeler will be very careful with this throw-in. Scott took it, but Duggan got hands to it. Right on there by Moskeen, the pick up by Slattery. Slattery is given the try. That's a lovely kick on by McGrath. On goes Ringland. Ringland, can he hold it? Knocked back by Winterbob, and Campbell may have got the try. And it's given.
Dusty Hare set a new championship scoring record for England.
As he pulled it round.
Affect the selection chances for the British Lions. Wales' rebuilt side would have taken the championship outright if they'd won in Paris. They took an early lead, but in a gruelling match, France went ahead near the end and finished in total command. Patrick Estève's try for France meant he'd scored in every home international this season, the first man to do so for 60 years.
Through goes Price, finds Billy James in support, inside the French 22, Holmes now, through to Dacey, and that's Ackerman, fell just outside the French 22, Holmes again though, through to Dacey, to Wyatt, Wyatt with Clive Rees outside, again firm tackling, the pickup is by Gwyn Evans, 8 metres out, fisticuffs as well, but Wales still in possession. Clive Rees, can he get round? Joannell looks inside and taken out, and in come Wales to score on the return pass. So a chance now. Joannell challenges it from Martinez. Cambrabero done this to Belascar to Blanco, and on the overlap is Estève. A brilliantly executed try, and one that ensures Estève a place in rugby history.
So, France and Ireland share the title, and England, who were favourites earlier this season, take the wooden spoon. League leaders Liverpool were held to a goalless draw by Everton in the Merseyside derby, but their rivals still couldn't make up any ground on them. Spurs captain Steve Perryman was sent off for the first time in 700 matches at Watford, but Mark Falco's goal gave Spurs their first away win in the league for 6 months. So Liverpool stay 15 points clear. Manchester United drew with the bottom club, Brighton, at Old Trafford. Two other candidates for relegation, Sunderland and Swansea City, met at Roker Park, where the board said the club would be put up for sale if there wasn't more crowd support. Nick Owen reports.
1,500 or so extra spectators turned up at Sunderland after an appeal for support from the latest club to declare severe financial problems. The gate was 17,400, still well below the figure for second division neighbours Newcastle United, and the Roker Park crowd's reward was a game against Swansea that, at least in the first half, was distinctly scrappy. Sunderland in the white shirts went one down early in the second half when Swansea's Chris Marustic seized his chance close to the goal mouth. From then on, Sunderland came to life and began to press hard, but it wasn't till 8 minutes from time that they finally managed an equaliser. From the right, Leighton James set the move up, and his cross went to Gary Rowell, who headed the ball just over the line. 1-1 was the final score, and Sunderland's money troubles are not helped by the fact that they've got to wait till Easter Monday for the next home game.
Dundee United's Ralph Milnes scored twice at Aberdeen and then was sent off, but his side hung on to win 2-1. Goal difference puts United into second place ahead of Celtic, who were beaten 2-1 at Dundee. Sebastian Coe has picked up his 12th world record, the indoor 1,000 metres. Just a week after he shattered the 800 metres indoor record at Cosford, Coe was running in today's Norway-England athletics match to inaugurate the new indoor stadium in Oslo. Coe was forced to pick up the lead earlier than planned, but once out in front, he steamed away.
And Sebastian Coe looking superb, running against the clock. But he's got a good bit to go against the clock, and there it is, and his 12th world record confirmed, 2:18.
Coe now hopes to take his tally of world records to 20 before he retires. and who'd bet against that? Barry Sheen was back on the racetrack today, just 8 months after a crash at Silverstone shattered both his legs and threatened to end his career. Sheen was riding in the South African Motorcycle Grand Prix at Kyalami. Philip Hayton again.
They've nicknamed him Bionic Barry because his legs are held together by 26 steel plates and pins. But with help from his girlfriend and parents, he was about to show the sort of metal he was made of. This was the first Grand Prix of the season, and this was Barry Sheen's comeback. Sheen got off to a slow start. Perhaps his legs aren't quite what they used to be. But it wasn't long before his courage and skill began to show. From a start near the back of the field, he was soon on his way. Sheen now wears steel plates in his leathers to protect his shins. After overtaking nearly half the riders on the Kyalami circuit, Sheen managed 10th place. It was everything he'd been hoping for. Freddie Spencer was the winner, but Sheen picked up a valuable championship point.
It was really nice because it's a long layoff, 8 months, and all the guys have been tested and everything, and I hadn't really ridden until I came here. But it's really nice to race again. You know, it pleased me because it's quite hot today and it's 30 laps. It's quite a long way, and I didn't really suffer any pain or aggravation at all.
What a boy. That's the news and sport from David and myself. Good night. Here it is.
Good evening to you. Well, I think the message in this forecast is to be prepared for colder weather, and in some parts of the country, very much colder weather. The reason for all that is the cold front on the chart that's just edging towards the northwest now. Fairly mild air over the country before the front arrives, which is bringing some rain as well, incidentally, but behind it, very much colder northwesterly winds, and they'll bring some wintry showers with them to the north tomorrow. And as the low itself gradually edges eastwards just past the north of Scotland there, I think we'll find this fairly cold weather staying with us, certainly for a fair part of next week. But let's have a look at tonight's chart first, because it's not really all that cold at the moment anyway. Indeed, it looks as though for much of England and Wales, it will be another fairly mild night. Certainly quite a wet night, and the rain's already reached many northern and western parts, Northern Ireland, western Scotland, and it's going to reach the rest of Scotland, western parts of England and Wales by the end of the night. Central and eastern areas, I think, staying dry, but clouding over. And for tomorrow, that cold front's going to continue to edge its way southeastwards, being followed in turn by brighter weather with a mixture of showers and some sunshine, but very much colder weather for the north. And although the southeast is likely to stay dry until around the middle of the day when the rain will arrive, even there it will turn colder later on with the prospect of some snow on the mountains. And that's it.
Two highlights for this Sunday night on BBC1. At 7:15, the Sunday film is 11 Harrow House, London headquarters of the largest diamond merchants in the world.
I say that establishes the fact that there's at least one way to beat the system.
Then at 9, the British Academy of Film and Television Arts will present its awards for achievement in 1982 in the presence of the President, Her Royal Highness, the Princess Anne. The ceremony will be hosted this year by the stars of Breakfast Time TV, Selina Scott and Frank Boff. And the whole 2 hours of sparkling entertainment will be brought to you live from Grosvenor House, Park Lane, London. Two highlights for this Sunday evening on BBC1.
The Horizon Lecture on BBC Two shortly, A Covenant for the Ark, is given by the Australian Professor Peter Singer, who argues that we need to re-evaluate our attitudes towards animals. Here on BBC1, Dynasty.